Hello, everyone. This is Alicia, and welcome back to the Eat Me podcast. Y'all, I am still in vacation mode. Actually went with my family to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and we had a blast. It was just so nice to be out of America and also just to be able to enjoy time with my family in such a beautiful place. If you've never been to Puerto Vallarta, definitely should go. You hear all the things about Mexico, right? You're like, oh my gosh, the worries, the this, that, the that, whatever. And then when you get there, you're like, this place is great. Like I loved it. I loved it. And another thing my family and I really noticed, we were like, the food here tastes so different. It tastes fresher. Looking at the ingredients, completely different than America. And I was just like, wow, what an eye opener, right? And so I was like, in my thoughts when I got back home, I was like, I would love to talk about this on the podcast because I don't know, how many people know about the regulations that are here in America versus other countries. And so I thought, I was in Mexico. Why not talk about the food safety regulations that happen in America versus Mexico? And y'all know me, I got to have my article. So I found an article and it's titled When Made in America Becomes a Warning Label, Food Safety in the U.S. versus Mexico. It's entitled When Made in America Becomes a Warning Label, Food Safety in the U.S. versus Mexico. So the article starts out, it says, why do tomatoes look perfect in the United States but taste better in Mexico? This might sound like a setup joke, but sadly not. Produce in Mexico tastes so much more like itself, even though American fruits and vegetables often look something like out of a commercial. Why is that? Is it the climate, the soil? A closer look at regulatory policies of both countries give us some clues. I'll say it plainly. Much of the food in the United States is a cesspool of disease-inducing toxicity. American food culture is facing a reckoning. Obesity is at an all-time high, chronic illness is rampant, and cancers that were once rare among adults, like colorectal cancer, are now appearing more and more in people in their 30s and 40s. These ominous trends aren't random. They're a result of decades of troublesome food policies that set the United States apart from much of the developed world, indicators of a system that consistently prioritizes corporate profit over public health. So the article goes on and says first world country, third world practices. Europe and Latin America maintain strong regulatory safeguards and stricter food safety standards than the US due to one major difference in policy. The European Union's regulatory body, the European Food Safety Authority, which is EFSA, that's the acronym, takes a precautionary approach. So if food or agricultural product safety is not definitely clear, it can be banned or restricted until it's proven safe. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the United States Department of Agriculture, however, generally take a more risk-based approach, allowing food products on market until harm is proven. Wow. According to the website of the Food and Safety Compliance Consulting B2B company, RDR Global Partners, the U.S. allows food manufacturers to determine the safety of food additives without FDA pre-approval. The EFSA, for example, bans or refuses approval of hundreds, in some estimates over 1,000 agricultural products and chemical food additives under this principle, many of which are legal in the U.S. This list includes toxic pesticides, synthetic hormones, growth antibiotics, and artificial dyes linked to cancer and hyperactivity in children. Meanwhile, American grocery shelves remain filled with products that would be pulled from stores in Paris and Berlin. Now, I'm going to stop there because that was just a lot to take in. But it's so true. It seems really abrasive as the way the writer writes this, but a lot of this is true. I mean, like I said, when I was in Mexico and we actually went to a grocery store and I picked up a pack of Oreo cookies because I was like, I just want to see what the ingredients are. And when I tell you the list of ingredients was probably half, cut in half in comparison to what you see here in America. I was blown away. Of course, I had to purchase the cookies and even tasting them, completely different taste. Not as sweet. They don't taste as chemically. Like if you've had Oreo cookies here in America, you know what I'm talking about. That weird chemically chocolate taste didn't taste like that at all in Mexico. I didn't get that really quick sugar spike that I normally get when I eat things like that. I was blown away by what I was witnessing in Mexico. And I'm just still like in shock thinking about it because especially now reading this article, it's just like, wow. Like it was one thing to assume things. I mean, you kind of know, you hear things by way of, whatever news sources you're, listening or reading. And just me, I'm always investigating things and looking up and researching things as it relates to food. So it's wild that I live in a country that doesn't do this preliminary work to ensure our food safety is priority, like other countries. You know what I'm saying? It's wild. The article goes on and says the case of the paraquat. Consider the recent case of paraquat, a pesticide manufactured in China but banned for use there because of its toxicity. Despite clear evidence linking to Parkinson's disease and other several health issues, the U.S. recently ruled it permissible for agriculture use. The logic is not logical. It's too dangerous for Chinese farmers in the country that exports it, but acceptable for American ones. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whether you like him or not, has brought to light many of these alarming truths. Corporate influence has dangerously compromised America's food safety system, prioritizing profit margins over public health. It's broken and the cracks are showing. Looking south. So, where does Mexico fit into this story? Are its agricultural practices any better than their northern neighbors? The answer is it's complicated and isn't everything these days. Mexico's regulatory framework reflects a different set of priorities. In many respects, it protects public health significantly more than the U.S. does. The country has banned 183 highly hazardous pesticides that remain authorized in the U.S. In 2025, it went further, prohibiting an additional 35 toxic pesticides, including albacarb, carbofuran, and indosulfan. Sorry if I'm butchering these names, all of which still used in American agriculture. Mexico is also phasing out glyphosate, the controversial herbicide linked to everything from cancer to neurological disorders. Though slowly and under pressure from the U.S. trade negotiators, sorry. Beyond pesticides, Mexico bans recombinant bovine growth hormone, so the RBGH, used widely in American dairy, chlorine washing of chicken, and standard U.S. poultry practice, and several synthetic food dyes linked to behavioral issues in children. Even preservatives tell a story. BHA and BHT, common in American processed foods, despite links to cancer, are banned in Mexico. Potassium bromate, still found in U.S. baked goods, is illegal in Mexican bread. So, the organic alternative, the article goes on to say, Mexico's commitment to agricultural reform extends beyond just banning the bad stuff. The country and its regulatory bodies have embraced organic and agroecological farming with enthusiasm. With 246,899 hectares of certified organic land, Mexico ranks as one of the largest organic producers in the world. Its organic standards are rated much stronger than American standards in terms of sustainable management. There's fundamentally different visions of agriculture in Mexico, one that prioritizes small scale farming. So 70% of Mexican farms are only 5 hectares or less, and sustainable methods over the large scale industrial operations and corporate mega farms that dominate American food production. The result is an agriculture culture that values flavor, biodiversity, and ecological balance as much as yield. The American advantage. To be fair, it's not as if Mexico has solved agriculture. Far from it. The country still permits 140 highly hazardous pesticides that are banned elsewhere. Regulatory enforcement can also be inconsistent across regions. Meanwhile, the U.S. still outperforms Mexico in several areas. Consistent monitoring systems, stronger data infrastructure, better farmer training, and advanced technology for precision agriculture. American farms are more efficient, more productive, and better equipped for large scale distribution. But efficiency isn't the same as quality. Producing more food doesn't mean producing better food. No nutrient produce. So the article goes on to this section. So in fact, these industrial farming practices in the U.S. have led to significant declines in nutritional value to produce due to soil degradation, monoculture when only one crop is grown versus a seasonal rotation, heavy synthetic fertilizer use, and prioritizing crop yield over nutrient density. For example, U.S. grown fruits and vegetables today contain less protein, calcium, iron, magnesium, and vegetable vitamins, compared to those grown decades ago, with documented drops in nutrient levels in key crops like broccoli and corn. However, because of a greater proportion of Mexican agriculture uses traditional methods, crop rotation, polyculture, conservation, agriculture, or organic fertilization, soil health and nutrient density are better sustained. The prevalence of small farms in Mexico means that they often maintain higher organic matter and soil fertility compared to intense crops due to less stripping of native vegetation and more integrative management. The article it continues on with what we choose to tolerate. At its core, this is about priorities. The U.S. can mass grow pristine looking tomatoes by the ton, but they're flavorless, lacking in nutrients, and chemically saturated. Mexico's tomatoes, by contrast, may often look imperfect but taste like the real thing because they are. They're less engineered for shelf life and more shaped by natural soil, sunlight, and microbial balance. They reflect a value system where flavor, nutrition, and ecological health matter more than yield, profit, and appearance. For a country that calls itself the greatest nation on earth, it's shocking that the U.S. tolerates standards rejected by much of the developed world. When a developing nation with a fraction of America's wealth and resources implements stricter food safety standards, it exposes the way American regulatory bodies disregard the safety and well-being of consumers in the name of profit. American made, in quotes, has become less a guarantee of quality than a warning label for products that wouldn't pass elsewhere. The article ends with priorities, not perfection. This isn't about perfection. Neither country has achieved that, but it's about priorities. And right now, America's priorities in food production seem oriented towards every constituency except the people who actually eat the food. Until that changes, we'll continue producing gorgeous, tasteless tomatoes while rates of diet related disease climb. We'll continue allowing chemicals in our food supply that China won't permit on its own soil. We'll continue calling ourselves exceptional while accepting standards that would be considered unacceptable almost anywhere else in the developed world. The evidence is there. The question is whether we'll demand better for the crisis becomes impossible to ignore. And that ends the article there. But I just thought this was something that was really important to talk about because I feel like when I see things, and like I said, when we were experiencing, the different food in Mexico and tasting it and just being like, oh my gosh, like this tastes so, much better and fresher. And like the article says, Mexico was not perfect in their actual practices, but overall, what they're doing is, really helping folks in ways that America is not. And so it's just something to think about. Because even when I think about myself, I mean, I'm vegan, but I take a lot of supplements, right? To sustain me because I know the nutrients that the fruits and vegetables that I should get from them, I'm not receiving that in the grains and all those things. So, we're doing our best here in America, right? but it's something to really think about and be aware of when we are consuming food here in this country, and if we're being properly, given the nutrients we need or not, right? I will share this article in the show notes with y'all. For those who might be like, oh my gosh, you're trying to bash America. This is not a bashing of America or anything of this sort. It's just making folks aware of what's going on outside of this country and what can always be better. There's always room for improvement anywhere you are. So I don't know how we'll solve this, but it's something to just be aware of. And if you know of ways to, manage and deal with this, here's some information that you can take with you on that journey. All right, y'all. I love y'all. And thank you for listening to this week's episode of the ED Podcast. I will see you next week. All right.